So in Japan, I think there's a growing feeling of inequality among the people. Uh, mm, Specifically, in other countries, it is reported that there's a direct compensation of the loss of revenues and incomes to those people who are most severely affected by this coronavirus outbreak, namely artists, musicians, and restaurant owners, and cinema theater owners, and nightclubs and bars and so on. These people who are most severely affected by the coronavirus outbreak are compensated directly by the government, which is sensible, I think, because this virus affects people on an equal basis in terms of health and symptoms. Mr. Boris Johnson, although he's the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is severely affected by this virus, and so it doesn't discriminate people on the basis of social status and so on. However, economically speaking, the effect of lockdown and partial lockdown in the case of Japan is affecting people in many different ways, so that some sectors are really severely affected, while others are most almost intact. Uh, when you think about it, members of the parliament and those public servants who decide on what kind of response the society should take, and imposes or asks people to follow the rules. These people are not so affected in terms of incomes, because after all, the nation pays these people, ministers, members of parliament, and public servants, the same amount of salary every month, even in this coronavirus outbreak, which is sensible, because I'm not saying that the payments to these people should be shrinked, because that would be really bad for the economy. Having said that, it is not such a difficult thing to predict which sectors would be affected by this uh, risk, right? So governments across the world are paying these people who are working in these most affected areas of economic activities, and that's sensible. However, in Japan, the government is very slow in compensating these people who are most affected by this coronavirus outbreak and society's reaction to it. So that is, kind of making peoples of Japan feel feeling this inequality that was probably inherent before this crisis, but now it's becoming more apparent. And you know, uh, there's this feeling that these people, ministers and members of parliament, who decide what policies to, make in the wake of this coronavirus outbreak, they are not feeling the pain because they do not lose their salaries and so on. While restaurant owners, bar owners, musicians, performers, they are losing big time, but the government is not going forward to compensate these people, which is really strange because, after all, we are living in a society and we are all in this together. So the job description of politicians is to amend any perceived inequities or any, um, you know, extraordinary losses that people might suffer. That is the job description of the politicians. So if the politicians do not do that, that is really bad for the nation and society in general. So I feel that the Japanese government has been slow in prevention of coronavirus outbreak. It has been very slow in testing and has been very slow in uh, expanding the medical facilities. But now, government is really slow in the day of on the day of a declaration of the state of emergency, in offering compensation to those people who are most affected by this crisis. So I think that's really bad. That's a really bad performance by the Japanese government, and I think if the government doesn't amend its way, it would leave a really deep scar on the Japanese society. So I hope the Japanese government would amend its ways and recognize what is really necessary in this situation.